there's something in one of the other talks that we did, we talked about this concept of using a crisis time. Obviously, you have to stabilize the business so that you survive, but then you have to be looking for the opportunities. So you're saying the best thing would be if you saw it ahead of time and were already positioned for it. And the second best thing then would be not just being kind of limp and passive throughout a crisis and waiting for it to end, but very quickly stabilizing and trying to figure out what the opportunities are. I always say the biggest mistake that people make in times of crisis is not finding and preparing for the opportunities that will be there coming out of a crisis. Because everybody's going to get through this. Well, okay, some people are going to die. But and some businesses are going to die.
Never mind, moving on. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, okay, the world isn't coming to an end. It will move on. We will have hopefully a different president in the U.S. and everything will calm down over the next. I don't know. I think this year is probably shot for sure. But coming out of this, what are the opportunities? And I think now is a really interesting time to be saying, okay, the possible reality that everything goes back to the way it was is just like that big. It's just not going to happen. So we should all be trying to figure out, okay, what is the new world going to look like coming out of this, and what are the opportunities? Maybe companies had a business model that isn't fit for the new world, and maybe they have to actually kind of use this time to redesign, not just prepare for things to go back to normal, but maybe even have a different business model coming out of it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, one of the things I say is generally in a crisis, it's been my observation that all people have a plan, and the plan is that they hope things get better. And then when that doesn't work, they have a backup plan, which is they hope harder. So, first they hope and then they hope harder. But the problem is that they're rabbits in a headlight and they're stuck there. They don't know which way to move. And as with every other business decision that gets taken, it's not what you do, it's what you do relative to your competitor that counts. And you may have a plan, but if your competitor has a better plan and starts acting quicker than you do, then they'll eat your lunch. So the trick is to be the first mover, to analyze the situation, to take a view on the shape of the crisis, to take a review of your strategic positioning, and then to get into the tactics of, okay, so let's say that you decide that the strategic position stays the same. What do we need to do tactically to protect our business now so that we're able to re-engage at some point in the future? You may take the view, and it may be at a later stage when things are a little clearer, that you need to revise the strategy after a month or two basically now, when a sort of time frame is clearer and the sort of impacts are clearer. And then that's when you go in and you take another look at the strategy. But right out of the box, you have to block and tackle to deal with the direct and immediate life-threatening, and I mean economic life-threatening, crises that will hit you as a result of this event.
Yeah.
So you then get into, well, okay, so what is it that's crisis management? How do you go about this thing at the front end? And whether it's this crisis or the next crisis, there's a simple kind of set of things that you need to do. The first thing is you need to look after yourself. It sounds a bit banal, but like they say in the plane, put the mask on yourself before you put it on the kid. If you don't have a plan for how you're going to deal with it, how you're going to deal with it as an individual, then anything else that you go about doing is going to be influenced by the fact you're in the middle of a crisis and you've lost direction and you've lost your stability. So, the simple stuff of, is make sure you do some exercise, make sure you have a clear delineation between the danger that we're getting into, by the way, in this new world, is that the delineation between a working day and the rest of your day disappears. I was on, it's not very bad for me because I don't have that sort of job, but I see my friends who are still running banks and other businesses, they have constant Zoom calls from 8 in the morning through till 10 or 11 at night. That ability to walk away from work has gone. So I think as you go into this, you've got to establish your personal borders, not at the risk of not taking the necessary action, but just to maintain your personal, psychological, and physical stability. Mm-hmm. So having done that, The next thing you have to do is you have to take you take an inventory of where you are. You can't, it's banal again, but you can't make a journey unless you know two things. One is where you're going, but the other one is where are you? You can't plot your course unless you know where you start from. And in a crisis, liquidity is oxygen and you're 30 meters underwater. So if you don't understand what your liquidity position is, then the danger is you have a nice plan, you're working on the plan, and suddenly you're out of money. And if you're out of money, game over. So things like draw down your loan facilities. If you've got unsecured loan facilities or uncommitted loan facilities, get out there and draw them down, because as an ex-banker, I can tell you one of the things we look at is material adverse change. And we don't give out the money unless we really think you're going to survive, because that's just good money following bad. So, better for you as a company to run the interest cost as a safety net by drawing down your facilities and keeping the cash on your balance sheet. The next thing is that you need to understand how you're going to manage your relationships with your suppliers and with your customers. Because obviously one of the areas that you will immediately look to is how to maximize your working capital or minimize your working capital needs by squeezing your receivables and lengthening your payables. So that's another sort of urgent solvency issue. So that now you've got the oxygen, now you have to have another plan, which is you've got enough time. I'm going to live through tomorrow because I have the money to live through tomorrow. The next thing is you have to take a view. You have to take the view, is this a V, a U, an L, a W, it's a Q, you don't know where it's going. I mean, basically you need to have a view. And once you've taken that view, you then have a series of actions that you can put in place according to that shape. And new information, relevant information, and by the way, not historic information,